Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today we have Sean Entin with us. Sean is the founder and CEO of Adventures in Health. He is a stroke survivor. Now he's known as the stroke hacker. He's a biohacker as well as a podcaster and a serial entrepreneur. He's got such an amazing, inspiring story journey that he's going to take us on in this episode. I'm really excited to have you on the show, Sean.
And thank you, Stefan. Thank you so much, buddy. It's a pleasure to speak to you. It's always so much fun. And where do you want to begin?
Well,
You
let's
tell
first
me.
of all start with where this all kind of
Oh, sure.
went
Okay.
sideways for you. You were
Yeah.
a chief marketing officer and a
Yeah.
serial entrepreneur and everything, and then
Yeah.
everything got derailed this one day when you had your stroke. So maybe you could share some of that
Sure.
story.
Of course. So let's take it back. I've lived two lives, Stefan. I've lived a life, and I say this, I'm 49 now. I lived a life from 39 and younger. And then I lived a life after 39. So what happened to me before the 39, I lived in San Diego on the water, had taken two companies with the team of people from private to public. They were in two different sectors. One was actually the Tequila company, where Shaquille O'Neal was a partner. Another one was Greenhouse Holdings, which was an energy, a company that just lowered the grade and made things a lot more sustainable. So I took people off the grid, whether it was solar, different energy efficiencies, built up a company there. And then living in San Diego, the world was perfect to me. I was married at the time. I have two young kids. They were 14 months at the time and 4 years old. And I had become friends with the local Navy SEALs. And always had a real huge heart and affinity and such an attraction to what they do. And I met the teams, they're called the teams on the West Coast, SEAL Team 7 in particularly, that they had real trouble integrating from the military life into civilian life. So they would come over and I just teach them how to, what they had to, they all wanted to be entrepreneurs. So me being an entrepreneur, this was easy. I was like, I'm giving back. Come on over. I'll feed you. Let's all hang out. Let me teach me about what's going on in your world. And what I realized is the government spends $8 million on these SEALs, $8 million from boots to combat. But what happens is that when they go overseas and they're like mercenaries and they're protecting our kids over here, they come back and they're civilians. They have no idea what to do. So I didn't understand what PTSD was. I didn't understand what brain injury was and what all these guys will go through and all the training and exercise and then in fact also what it takes actually to lose a brother or a sister in combat and to see the amount of death and everything else. So I would start spending some time with them, and they wanted to learn hand-to-hand combat. And so I have a good friend in San Diego. His name is Dan Henderson, who was at the time the number one ultimate fighter on the planet in the MMA world, in the UFC and Strikeforce. They were like, Dan Henderson says, yeah, come over to his gym. I'll let Dan teach you because what the Navy doesn't want these SEALs to actually do is they don't want them to get within 3 feet of their opponent. So they do not want them having any hand-to-hand combat. Very minimal. They want them to be a sniper, collect intel, report it back to the Pentagon and the CIA, and get in and get out. And these guys were like junkies for hand-to-hand combat. And one day rolling with them, and I'm just I'm a civilian. I'm an amateur mixed martial artist. I was wrestling with them or one of our classrooms, and one day we were doing some basic moves in jiu-jitsu. You always come back, you're banged up. I was very healthy. My cardio was way up there. Here I am at 39, training with these guys who are in their 20s, who are Abercrombie and Fitch models, who are the peak of the best, and they would be around all these other special tier one operators, whether it was from the Rangers, the Green Berets, the Marsocs, even the Israeli, the British. They were always surrounding themselves with the best. And then so I was loving hanging out with them, spending time. One day I was rolling in jujitsu and I got caught in a choke, and getting caught in a submission or choke is really a routine exercise. You either get submitted or you get choked out. No big deal. So I got choked out, come home on that night, and I said to my wife at the time, my throat's killing me. Something's going on with my throat, and I didn't know what it was. And being as fit as I was like, oh, it's just a scratch, it's a scrape, it's a bruise, it'll go away. Maybe I have a swollen gland. Who cares? Like whatever's going on. So I kept feeling this pain here on the right side of my neck. So I go along with my routine. I'm raising money on Wall Street. I'm traveling the United States. I think I may have even jumped to Mexico, went down to the Dom Rep. I was traveling for businesses. I was the marketing officer, chief marketing officer of the company that I began. And I was just living the life. I mean, we lived next to SeaWorld, which is, a water park. And one kid was on my shoulders, one kid's on my chest. And things were actually great, Stephan. And then we go away to San Luis Obispo for Thanksgiving, which is 10 years this month coming up on Black Friday. We go up to Thanksgiving for San Luis Obispo to hang out with a friend of ours. And the following day after Thanksgiving, I woke up and I was like, I'm not feeling good. Like maybe it's just too much wine, and I'm like, maybe I'm just hungover, but I don't even drink that much. And I go to try to stand up. I start to feel shaky. I go look in the mirror in the bathroom, and my face is ash gray. My left side of my face is drooping down. I couldn't lift my left arm. I put my right hand in front of me, couldn't even see my hand. And all of a sudden, no kidding, Sam, I see my soul leaving my body. It's like I'm having this outer body experience where I'm watching this, and I'm going to I said to Stephanie, call my dad. He's a doctor. I think I'm dying. And my dad evaluates and says, Stephanie, call the paramedics right now. My son's having a stroke. And my speech at that time was going down. All she heard was, rah, 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 rah. So I couldn't even talk. I'm trying to talk. And next thing you know, the paramedics will show up. And I think I'm talking to everybody, but all they hear is, wow, 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 wow. And here I am thinking I can talk, but nothing's going on. And turns out that they take me to one hospital. That hospital was way too small for what needed to be done. They couldn't evaluate me because I was in such great shape. They're like, is this guy, is your husband on anything? Is he on any kind of drugs? What's going on? I was supposed to go run a 5K that morning for a charity event for Thanksgiving in San Luis Obispo just to give back. And I got to one hospital, and the ER doc said, I can't help him. We got to get him down to Santa Barbara because there's a neurosurgeon, if he's even in town, that needs to get a hold of him because something's going on with his brain. And I didn't know I was coming in out of consciousness. Next thing I know, I get, they're transporting me to a helicopter where they're taking me to a hospital in Santa Barbara, which is probably about an hour and a half to 2 hour ride from San Luis Obispo in California to Santa Barbara, where I remember waking up, kind of going into a whole new facility, and I couldn't speak. And I didn't know what was, all I knew, something was going on with me. And I said, I think I'm just dying. I think I'm just going to go. And the pain was just so bad. I felt like someone was putting a vice on my head. And my ex-wife, a neurosurgeon named Dr. Zahner, happens to be in the ER on Black Friday, ready for me. Because if I would have showed up in Los Angeles, there's no one around who could have taken care of this. There's like maybe one or two doctors, I'd probably say in the country, who could have done what they could have done. So he runs me through a series of tests, figures out that my carotid artery is dissected so badly that it was that of a gunshot wound or a knife wound to my carotid artery. So it had dissected, sending out clots to my brain. So clots are going up to my brain, stopping the blood flow and the oxygen going to my brain, which means I'm dying. The brain's playing tricks on me, and something's about to happen here. So he evaluates me, and immediately he says to my wife, he says, I need you to sign these papers right now, or your husband's going to pass away within moments. My dad's coming in from LA to Santa Barbara. So I'm going to get teary-eyed in a second. And he gets there as I'm wheeling into the OR operating room. And Stephanie's like, I got to wait for Sean's father to show up. He's a surgeon and the neurosurgeon. I don't have time to wait for anybody. I got to get in right now and do what I'm going to do. So he did a procedure that wasn't even FDA approved. He threw a catheter through my hip, all the way up my side of my body, put a shunt into my carotid artery, stopped the clotting from going to my brain. That was the first thing he did. So he did that procedure first. And I'm coming in and out of consciousness. I don't remember much. I remember being naked on a table, freezing, and seeing this man's head pop up in between my legs. And I'm like, someone tell me something's not right here. So that starts happening. Then they decide to try to freeze me because my brain is swollen so badly that it's coming out of my skull. It's literally falling the backside of my head because the pressures it's too much to handle because there were clots going on, and the circulation of the blood and the oxygen was not able to really to survive. So it's all getting all blocked up. It's like a dam of energy not being able to get to the brain. And the brain, as you knows runs the whole nervous system of the body. It's the center part of, it's like the brain of a computer. What's the brain of the computer? The CPU, Stephan?
CPU.
The CPU. So the CPU is now frying. It's fried. So it's frying. So they tried to freeze me. That didn't work. They threw the shunt in my carotid artery. Then I'm coming in and out of consciousness. A couple of days later, I'm not really responding to much. I'm able to see something like I'm coming in and out of consciousness. Finally, my dad comes in, or my best friend comes in, or was it I forgot who it was, and says, you're going to go to sleep for 10 days. And I'm just like, I'm going to sleep. Or they didn't know how long I was going to go. And they said, we have to put you in a coma. I'm like, I don't want to go into a coma. I want to go work out. I want my kids, but I couldn't speak. So then they induced a coma, which was 10 full days. And they're hoping to regulate my swelling in my brain. But at the time, they were running all these tests on me. They didn't know what was going to happen. So they ran it for 10 days. I was induced for a coma for 10 days. Usually after about that much time, they have to put a trach in you. Well, they had to put a trach in me because I remember in those 10 days, I'm going to get kind of sidetracked here. I actually crossed over and saw the light and then came back. So I played on the other side for 10 days. And when I woke up, first time I woke up was on the operating table face down. And I remember them talking, and I remember the lidocaine was coming off the side of my face, and a suture had dropped. And I didn't understand what was going on because I was so numbed up. But what they were doing was they were doing a craniectomy. So the coma didn't work. The craniectomy is when they took a piece of the skull off my head, and they had it, literally this whole piece came off. They usually put it in a jar to freeze it and not knowing when it's going to go back on. But this neurosurgeon said, this guy's young enough and he's in great shape that I'm going to put it in his abdomen, store it there, and I'm going to put it back on his head in a couple of days. I know this sounds crazy. Hearing me talking about it sounds nuts still 10 years later. So I wake up the first time on the OR table, and they put me back to sleep. Then I remember them waking me up from the coma, and interesting enough, where the stroke hit the side, hit my brain was on the right side. So the left side of my body is now paralyzed and weak. They're able to sit me up. I'm not able to speak much because everything is just being, my CPU, my brain, and my body is all out of whack. It's all fried up. So I had enough speech in there to say, hey, because I haven't had any food or anything in 10 days. I said, I'm hungry. I need water. They couldn't do anything like that to me because they had to make sure I could swallow. So they'd run a series of tests on me. The tracheotomy didn't come. They're about to put the scalpel into my throat. And I grabbed the guy's hand with the scalpel and said, we're not doing this. They had already put 2 feeding tubes in me because I went from 175 pounds to 135 pounds in 10 days. I lost about 30 pounds of muscle because I was that well built and that much in shape. And then I came conscious, and I basically said to my dad, I had a helmet on my head. I said, what happened? He goes, and best as he could, he goes, you're paralyzed. You're paraplegic. I said, what is that? He goes, the left side of your body is it doesn't work. And the neurosurgeon came, back into the room and said, I'm initiating therapy right now. This guy, we have memory. We have speaking, part of the brain where it's all, the hippocampus is where everything is regulated, and the back of the brain where the speech is going on is still intact because most people have pretty bad aphasia. My aphasia was so bad, but it came back much sooner. So here I am in the ICU, thinking to myself, going, because I didn't know where I was or what the hell was happening. All I know is that I was in pain, and when I woke up from the coma, my feet were killing me. Like I had been running miles and miles and miles, but what I was doing was traveling the world on a whole nother surreal experience to wake up. And now they're telling me that you're paralyzed and don't scratch and I start scratching my abdomen. I'm like, why is this itching? And they go, your skull's in your abdomen. I said, my brains are in my belly. This doesn't make any sense. And then I was there for about November the 25th until January the 5th, which is my 40th birthday in Santa Barbara. And then they moved me from Santa Barbara back to San Diego for inpatient rehab.
Wow.
So that's the first part. That's just the first part. So the second, so really where the story will get interesting is I get moved down to San Diego, and then again I'm thinking, oh, I can get back in my yoga, I can get back in my running, throw some weights in front of me, I'm gonna get back on the mat, let's keep doing some jiu-jitsu. But it's not realizing is that I have no left side, my speech is terrible, my eyes. So imagine getting cut straight in half. I couldn't hear, I couldn't see, nothing's working at all. And I had to reboot and reprogram everything all over again. So they put me into an inpatient rehab in San Diego, where I lived there, post-acute it's called. I lived there for I'd probably say for about 3 months, from January 5th till about April of 2012. And that was tough because you go from being independent to being dependent. And the first neuropsychiatrist who got a hold of me said to me, you have brain damage. You may never walk again. You're never going to drive. You're never going to get back to work. And don't count on your speech coming back. And there was little words of what I said to her is I said, you're fired. And she says, what? I said, you're fired. Don't ever tell me I can't do anything. Hence the saying behind me is that I can, I shall, I will. And I kind of, I said, get me a team of people in here right now that tell me I can do anything, because I don't believe in the word I can't. I don't believe in the impossible. I believe in the possible. And that journey in there was very tough because I had to learn how to eat. I had to learn how to use the bathroom. I had to learn how to regain just walking, because I was in the chair. I wheeled around that hospital nonstop. And that boot camp was literally from 5:30 a.m. to 8 o'clock at night. But I can only go for so much time. Like I could go for 45 minutes at a time, and then I'd have to take a break because the brain needs time to heal and then to rest. So challenging times, stuff, and challenging times for anybody. And then a series of events. I was at inpatient rehab for about 3 months. Then I was taken back home where I was initiated into some more therapy, the home health, which they had to teach me how to get acclimated back to my house because I couldn't walk steps. I didn't know how to use the toilet myself. I had to relearn everything. So here I am with my ex-wife at the time. I'm 39, an adult male in diapers, being dependent on her. We had to get a caregiver and 2 little girls who don't understand what's happened to their dad. The hardest point was just not being able to really hold my daughters, change the diapers. Like I said, I was always running and taking them to the zoo, going to SeaWorld. We lived on the beach. We'd be in the water. I was very active. And here I am going through severe, and then in the inpatient rehab, they told me, if you want to get into the gym and start to work out in your physical side, because I knew I had to get my physical body back. I had to get off all my pain meds, and I had to get disconnected from every single cord. So I had 2 feeding tubes. I had a feeding tube in me. I had a PICC line in me. I had 20 some sutures on me. So what did I do in inpatient rehab? I started pulling out my own G tube, start pulling out my own PICC line. I said, I'm going into the rehab. Someone get stuff out of me now. And they said, you can't go off your own pain medication because you're going to go through, you're going to go into, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm going to go into shock, or, when you're addicted to something, what's the word? You're going to go withdrawals. You're going to go into withdrawal because I was on so much Dilaudid, morphine, and all these drugs, which were needed. Plus now top on the anti-anxiety pills, the Clonopins, the Xanaxes, the Zolofts. everything imaginable, and they had to do what they had to do to calm me down because, and I get that. Um, but I wasn't really happy being in that world because I didn't live in that Western side. Listen, what the surgeons did and the doctors did, they saved my life. And then I lived in San Diego. I was the breadwinner. We couldn't support my lifestyle, our lifestyle, because it's really all about my kids and my wife at the time. And here I am running two companies, being the CMO, being the spokesperson, being the promoter, and I'm having trouble speaking. I'm having trouble adding and just doing simple, basic everything and being independent. So then I went back into what's called an outpatient rehab where I went every day again, which was exhausting because I was so mentally tired all the time that, and then I met, a lot of these people that circles back to the military. I met a Marine who was blown up by an IED. He had, I was always crying and depressed about myself, but when I met this Marine who I really took love to, he had no left arm and no left leg, and he was young and had a wife and kid home. And here he was. I come back into outpatient rehab. That following week, this Marine is gone. And I said to my therapist, I said, why is this Marine gone? And they go, well, he got discharged because they think he's capable of being on his own. And I'm like, then why in the hell am I here? They said, well, you have insurance and you have money. And I'm like, our own military sending this guy home because they think he's ready to be. I said, he's never going to make it. I mean, he's going to end up taking his own life or taking his wife or his kid. And that's when I really started to have a heartbeat and started to realize and snap out of my own shit, not worry about why me, it's about what's next. So that's when I started to really see, wait a second here. I have the gratitude and the luck to have money and to have insurance, but our own military won't take care of our veterans. And I saw a lot of this happening in these places, in the rehab places, that people would get let go early because they only gave me 100 hours of physical therapy. What is 100 hours going to do for me to learn to walk? I mean, it takes thousands of hours. And I was so determined that I remember grabbing in outpatient therapy, I grabbed a pole and I finally got the courage to take my first step. And I remember saying, I can, I shall, I will. And that's what got me from the Hemi walker to a cane to a stick to a 3-point. And that's when I started walking, and then I wouldn't stop. So I kept going. But what I also realized that it was about a mindset to me. But the mindset was not clear, Stephan. I was in no way, shape, or form to be back home with my family. I couldn't stand light. I couldn't stand sound. I couldn't be around anybody. It was really depressing. Suicide was there. I was trying to literally take myself off the cliffs if I could. I lived on something called the Sunset Cliffs in San Diego. And I was really sad. I tried to come back too soon. I wasn't resting enough. And I just did not understand the dynamics of the brain injury and how to actually reboot the brain once this traumatic thing happens.
Wow. So you ended up learning some techniques, biohacking techniques that made a huge difference for you.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Okay, so this is the second part of my life. So from 2010 until about now, I've been on a journey. I actually came back to Los Angeles. I had to move back in with my parents. I had to be separated from my wife and my children because I couldn't even be around that much noise. I needed a place where I could be calm. My dad was retired. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And I couldn't use the shower myself. I couldn't use the toilet myself. I didn't know how to do anything. And here I am one-handed with a headache, a 24-hour-a-day headache, and a sound and a throb. But just kept saying to myself, it won't quit. And I didn't know how to make it quit. And along that way, believe it or not, I found the journey of chiropractors. I found holistic healers. I found healers from New Zealand. I found healers from different parts of the United States that I would just flock to. And then I found the cannabis plant, which was CBD, which really was the first thing and the first point of it. Okay, if I can replace one pill, one anti-anxiety pill, and put that with a plant-based, which is the cannabis, on a CBD strain, mixed with THC, how will I feel? So I started microdosing myself really with plant-based product, cleaned up my diet. I knew I had to start doing all that. And then someone said to me, actually a gentleman from Metal, his name was Ryan Coleman, said, I want you to post for 30 days straight on your recovery on Facebook Live. And I'm like, why do you want me to do this? He goes, the world needs to know who you are. And I'm challenging you to do this right now. And I was like, I don't want to do it. I started doing it. I had a couple of people watch me. Next thing you know, it's up to 50, it's up to 100, it's up to 1,000, it's up to thousands. And I'm like, people are now finding me in the, in the hospital, and they're reaching out to me saying, hey, can you help us get through this? And I've helped. And through all that, I started helping people just with their daily, how to, when to drive again, how to get back to work, how to meditate, certain things, nutrition, supplements, food. What's the difference between a speech therapist, an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, and then how do you discover all that? And I walked through so many, back before the COVID days, I'd go visit stroke centers and walk around. And a lot of the times, Stephan, it's really just helping out the families of the loved ones. Because to be honest, Stephan, God forbid something happens to your wife or kids, you're not going to know what to do if there's a brain injury. You're going to find me and go, Shawnee, what do we do? And then I'll be able to lay it all out for you. Because there's really no one on the planet, except for a few of us, who really understand what it's like to go through a brain injury and to recover from it. Because most of the time, I'm one out of 6 billion people who actually live to tell the story. Literally, it's out of every 45 seconds, someone's having a stroke. 1 out of every 30 seconds, someone's having a brain injury or a concussion, and no one knows how to deal with it. And when you hit that, and you hit the physical pain mixed with the emotional pain, it causes some deep, dark depression. It causes some deep, dark suicide thoughts, and you just want to check out. You want to get the hell out of life, and you want something. So my journey through my adventure and meeting the chiropractors actually ended me up at Dave Asprey's Upgrade Labs, or Bulletproof Labs, in Santa Monica, where I was invited down there through a CBS contact because they wanted to do a news piece on me because I've been on CNN and Fox and ABC already, and throughout the first pitch for the A's and then the Angels, in California for the baseball league. I went through there and I was able to handpick what worked for me. And a couple of things I found in there, I have behind me is LiveO2, which is a oxygen. I call it my own oxygen chamber, but that thing has saved my life. This thing what's called, it maxes your VO2. So what it does, it throws enough oxygen into the brain and into the body where things are not flowing. And if you put oxygen and get circulation going and blood flow, you're going to move better and you're going to move without pain, because the body will get swollen. It'll get lethargic. It'll gain crap. And if things aren't going to move and you get stagnant or you get stale, then it's all over. So basically I created a nonprofit called the Move to Improve Foundation, Move to Improve, which really was to help the veterans, provide them and people who don't have the money and the health insurance to get recovery. So I've actually decided to build my own reboot center myself in my own house. So you're looking at a few different things, but I've met along the way some fascinating people like Dr. Reverseland, who's my chiropractor, invented the Theragun. Now it's a Therabody. He makes a CBD. This vibrating percussor can go anywhere on my body and get me out of spasms and reduce the amount of tension or flow. So what I have a trainer do is I get on that LiveO2 4 times a week on a spin bike, and don't get me wrong. When I first started on that spin bike, I couldn't even get myself on the bike without falling off because my gait and my alignment was so off. Now I get on that thing and I used to be able to go for 3 minutes or 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes at the most. Now I'm going for 25 to 30 minutes, 4 times a week, at like an RPM, which is probably about between 100 and 150, which is a lot. And I see such results on small things like this and things behind me, like red light therapies and other things that I've done, because a neurologist is great. They're going to look at you. They're going to give you a prescription. An internist is wonderful. They're going to check your blood levels. They're going to check to see your cholesterol, your white blood cell count, your red blood cell count. All that's fine. But how are they going to physically help you to stand up, walk around, check your gait, check the orthotics in your shoes? Hey, wait a second. Yeah, we can check your eyesight. Okay, your vision's not great on the left or the right. So I came up with a technique. If you put a patch on the good eye and you walk around, don't drive with it, and you walk around with the patch on the good eye, it's going to force your left eye to do even some more movement. It's going to increase, it's going to cause the left eye then to step up. And it's like certain things that I've done, I call it hacking things. I converted my whole inside of my kitchen, because if you think about it, stuff, and how do you cut a bagel? You grab it with one hand and you slice it. How do you grab a toothbrush? You take one hand, you take the toothpaste and the toothbrush, and that's easy. It's like, how do you put on a shirt? How do you put on your pants? How do you put on your shoes? Yeah, they teach you all this stuff in basic therapy, but a lot of people just get tired. They get anxiety. And my whole goal is to get someone independent as fast as possible, back to working or back to doing whatever that they enjoy, so I can get their serotonin levels up and get their dopamine up, so I can get them to a happy place again.
You know, it's funny that you had mentioned Live02, because I had Tom Butler on this podcast a few years ago after experiencing the Live02 at the Bulletproof conference, at the Bulletproof Biohacking conference, and they had the equipment there, and I was really impressed by it. And the person who was doing the demo, she had gone through a severe car accident, and her prognosis was not good. It was actually terrible. Mm-hmm. And Live02 saved her life. She somehow discovered that. I forget the story, but she was on that episode as well for like 5-10 minutes, telling her story and her experience. And wow, what an incredible biohacking technology that is life-saving.
And well, thank you, Stephan. And what's so great, I become friends with all the CEOs of all these companies. So Mark Scribb, who's the founder and the inventor of the Live02, which I'll connect you with as well. He should definitely be on your podcast, because you guys can geek out like crazy on that. Mm-hmm. He's got so many things up his sleeves. But I literally have pulled on engineers and mad scientists to say, hey, what do I need next? Because I'm never going to stop until I can help not only show about, so people send me stuff here to my own reboot center in my home, just so I can validate it. Because I'm like, because you can easily going through any kind of injury, spend thousands. I spend probably a $250,000 on whether it's snake oil or other stuff, because I want to get better. It's like someone said to me now, they're like, what happened to all the money you had? I said, well, what's the price to walk? And they're like, yeah, exactly. The price to walk is priceless. So I did whatever I had to do to walk again, because I knew I could walk if I just took those first couple steps. And those first couple steps were the hardest. I've done 2 5Ks. I've done a 10K. I have a goal set to do a half marathon someday, not right this second. But coming back, second part of my life, I learned about compassion. I learned about kindness. I met some incredible people along the way. And my whole journey is just finding people, with my own show, is that there's a hero within inside of all of us. And unless you've been through the trauma and the pain, you don't really understand life.
Yeah. And speaking of that, like, do you see this whole journey as a gift now, or are you feeling resentment over it, or like where are you at with that?
That's a great question. Sam Morris, who you know well here, who comes every Tuesday to train with me, train on the Live02 and get the therapy done by one of my team members here. I had a conversation with Sam, because Sam on Tuesday, it was his 21-year anniversary of his accident. And Sam, just so everyone knows, is a full spinal cord injury from the T12 down. From the belly button down, he has nothing, zero, no sensation of anything. Where I'm able to walk. I walk with a limp. I have no left side, very weak side, left side. But I look at him and I go, he's amazing. And I said to Sam, I said, if you could go back in time, realize we're not going to be friends. You won't be friends with any of the people you are now. Would you do it? And I looked at him, he looked at me, and the amount of tears that came in our eyes together, we connected. And it's like, I can't go back in time. All I can do is live in the now and be okay with being okay. And I'm still learning that journey, Stephan. I'm still finding out, am I going to ever, it's 10 years this month. This month is so hard for me still. I wish I could tell you, but I'm not going to ever lie. I'm raw and honest and brutal as it is. It's some tough moments. I mean, I remember everything I was doing days and weeks before my stroke. I mean, whether it was climbing a mountain, whether it was getting up at 5:30 or 4:30 in the morning, going to run with SEAL Team 7 in San Diego, going fishing with my friends, or being able to go a 6, 7, 8 hour day, which I'm still not able to do. I'm able to go 2, 3, 4 hours a day, and then I need to rest. But what I do know is I'm able to help thousands of people, and I have. And I know that my mission now is far greater than what it would have been had I not had the stroke. And that's why I've got to create my materials and do what I'm doing and put it out there, because people need it right now. Because the fact that people are killing themselves over a brain injury and over being a veteran or being first responders. I mean, we both have a mutual friend in metal, I won't mention his name, who just retired as a captain. He said the biggest thing the fire department, the police department now are hiding is the suicide rate of our first responders. That's unacceptable to me. I've got to make, you call me the chosen one. I've got to help these people out. And by putting them on the Livo 2, I've seen data of veterans. I saw this one guy, his name is Tree, who had severe PTSD, go through a series of treatments with Mark Squibb, who's the inventor of the Livo 2. And the video shows his 3-year-old daughter coming on the video and says, my daddy's back. My daddy's back. And the wife saying on camera, saying, I was ready to leave him and divorce him because I couldn't handle who he had become after the war. And it's part of the journey is to save these people, but to save them and provide them with a place of happiness and kindness. Because that's what I think the world's really all about. And like I was sharing earlier with you, I think one of the biggest secrets is not just our military, but Israeli army. Everyone at 18 has to go into the military there. You're not given a choice. And just to go through the trauma of going through the boot camp is harder than going off to war, because the amount of combative training, the amount of how many times can someone jump out of a plane and land on the ground, get shocked, roll into position with a gun, your whole body's feeling it every time. How many times can you put C4 on a door, you breach into a house? Well, the first 4 guys of 10 who breach into a house are all getting concussed. That amount of impact that's hitting the brain, everyone thinks a skull is surrounding the brain, but the brain lives in water. Every time the brain hits that side, it's bruising, and those bruises turn into calcium deposits, which form CTE, which forms all these NFL guys who are not able to make it. Hockey, any kind of contact sport. So it's like, it's one of these things where I know how to help heal people, and guys like Dave Asprey and myself, even though Dave's a little different, and I love what he does, but Sam and I are probably much the experts who can really show people what to do. So that's my mission, is really to show people, and tell people, hey, I can, I shall, I will, and just keep moving. You're going to improve.
Yeah. Sam was a guest on this podcast, by the way. I'll include links to these different episodes that we're talking about in the show notes. So listener, you can check out getyourselfoptimized.com for that. So I wanted to spend these last few minutes talking about your time of those 10 days on the other side, and
of course
also the relationship to that you have with Mark Nelson, who is also a guest on this podcast, and as a medium and like accessing the other side. He actually saved a family member's life of mine. And I shared that in the episode. So could you share a bit about this?
Yeah, of course. I love Mark. He's one of my best friends. So, it's so funny you brought up Mark and the story. So this ties all in perfectly. So when I crossed over and I played on the other side, I came back with certain gifts that I didn't know how to use or didn't know what they were doing. Because you understand, the world that we live in now is the physical world. There's a whole nother plane out there of metaphysical, whatever people want to call it, but there is life after death, or there's a place to go. And when you are given, and let me share with you part of my coma, and this is why it ties into Mark. In my coma, I'm I'm having a real tough time, as you can imagine. My grandfather, who's my mom's dad, who was my best friend growing up, my mentor, everything to me. We golfed every Saturday. He was a very successful entrepreneur. Never said no to me in his life. He would have been 99 today, I think. Um, Literally, he pulls up in a golf cart. The golf cart, I think, is empty. And I said to Pop, I said, let me go golf with you. And he goes, no. And I cried. I was like, Papa, what do you mean I can't? He goes, you cannot go with me. You're not going with me in this Jewish voice. You're not going. You're going to go back home. I said, I don't want to go back home. I want to go with you. And he goes, not right now, Shawnala. He used to call me Shawnala. Not right now, Shawnala. And he takes the golf cart, goes to the first tee, puts a ball down the first tee, takes out his golf club, swings his big head. The club hits the ball. Ball goes up in this white light. As it goes in the white light, he starts to take the golf cart and drives off in the white light. And I feel these hands coming on me to take him with me. And he's like protecting me and saying, now is not your time. And as soon as he did that, I woke up from my coma.
Wow.
So, but there's a whole nother side of the coma that we'll talk about on another time. But that's how I woke up. So first couple of years back, or probably 13 and 14. I think I met Mark in 13 and 14. My mother, who had raised me twice, once at birth and once again at 39, because I had to move back in with my parents because I had to be separated from my kids and Stephanie at the time. Someone said to me, you need to find a medium because things are happening. And I was like, oh, great. Where am I going to find a medium? I'm like, I'm going to end up going down to Venice. It's going to be some Rastafarian guy with beads and necklaces and chains and holes and, all this crazy stuff. So I ended up getting connected to this Mark Nelson. Not only is Mark this world-renowned psychic, he lives a mile and a half away from me in Tarzana or Woodland Hills, which is adjacent to my town. And I go see him and he does a reading for me. And he says, I see you on stage. I see your hand working. I see your fingers working. I see all this stuff. I see everything. And Mark and I became friends after that. I was like, we need to hang out. We need to catch a movie. We need to grab a beer together. And he's become such a wonderful friend and just a great soul. So he was actually to help me. He actually is able to help me understand the gifts that I have because he has gifts way beyond mine, but I'm able to tap into some of his. People call it spidey senses. I don't know if you've ever been in a room, Stephanie, and you're like walking around, you're like, ooh, I don't want to talk to that person over there. I've always had a gift to know who I want. Like I have a gift really to attract light workers and energy workers who are on the same level. Yeah. And people who are like the real deal. And that's why I'm attracted to like when I get to know somebody in person, I have to feel them and get close to them. And we'll have to connect, of course, in person. But when I get to know somebody and they have that white light similar to mine, there's an energy that just takes place that I want more of. Yeah. And that's what I've kind of
I can relate to that.
I have a gift with finding like the right people.
Yeah.
And awesome. Mark is just one of those, and so is Sam. And but a lot of the guys in metal, I mean, there's a lot of, but some people don't even know like they have gifts. And I don't publicly talk about any of this stuff because I mean, there's people out there. If I hear somebody in public talking about their gifts, I'm like, just shut up because you're not talking. You don't know what you're talking because people who think they want to have something, they usually don't. It's a small collective of us who know what we have, but we don't talk about it because we don't need to talk about it because we already know what we have. It's like, why show off? Okay, so what? Come look at my Rolls Royce or my souped up Tesla, BFD. I really don't care. I'm walking. Look. I don't need to own. All this millions of dollars worth of stuff. It helps recovery, but I'd rather spend the money on helping someone walk again than buying myself a Tesla at this point. But everyone has their priorities. So my goal with Mark is really, I want to build him his own TV show. I want to build him. He needs to be, because he's a health intuitive, and he actually was one of my hosts at one time for my own show, for our show together. And he's an amazing guy.
He is a beautiful soul.
Beautiful soul.
All right. So we're out of time. So where do we send our listener to learn more from you and Yeah, maybe they
Sure.
could have
Yeah,
somebody
I mean,
that they love get some benefit from, or themselves get benefit
of course.
from working with you. What
Of
website should we
course.
send them to?
Okay, so I mean, you can go to SeanEntin.com. You can go to strokehacker.com. My podcast is called Adventures in Health.tv. But if you put Sean Entin and stroke, or Sean Entin stroke hacker, it's going to populate
Yeah.
right to me. And my biggest thing is I tell everybody is don't give up, don't make excuses, and if you feel the world is turning upside down, it can only get better. And
Yeah.
if you plateau, there's room to grow.
Yeah. Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sean. Thank you for your vulnerability and transparency and your heart and all that you are in
Thank
this
you.
plane of existence. We'll catch
Thank you.
you, listener, on the next episode, and share your light out there. And this is Stephan Spencer
Thanks so
signing
much,
off.
Stephan.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
buddy.
Sean.
Okay.